All right, welcome back everyone to the deep dive. It's fascinating. The more we learn about the world around us, the more we realize how much is still hidden in plain sight.
Oh, absolutely. And that's especially true when it comes to, well, potential anti-aging compounds.
Right. I mean, today we're diving into something that you probably already know, at least in a different context.
Exactly. We're talking about lithium,
Yeah, lithium.
the stuff that's, been used in psychiatry for years.
Yeah, for mood stabilization and all that. But
Yeah.
there's a whole other side to lithium that's, well, it's starting to make waves in the longevity world.
And that's what we're here to uncover today.
Absolutely. We've been digging deep into the research, especially this paper, uh, lithium and anti-aging, potential mechanisms and future research. It's a treasure trove of interesting information.
And for all of you listening, we're going to break it all down for you. We're aiming to make this deep dive both super informative and easily digestible. Because, well, honestly, who's got time to wade through pages and pages of dense scientific jargon? Not us. Right. So let's jump right in. One of the first things that really caught our attention in this paper was, well, how lithium might actually be influencing those little things called telomeres.
Telomeres. Now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. Those are like the caps on the ends of our DNA strands, right?
Exactly. Think of them as those little plastic tips at the end of your shoelaces, those aglets. They protect the ends from fraying.
And fraying DNA doesn't sound good.
Not good at all. See, those telomeres, they get shorter every time our cells divide.
And that's just a natural part of aging, right?
Absolutely. But here's the thing. When telomeres get too short, cells can't divide properly anymore. And that contributes to something called cellular senescence. Basically, the cells get old and, well, they can even start causing problems for their neighbors.
Oh, so it's not just that they stop working well, they actually become a liability.
Potentially, yeah. And what's really interesting here is that lithium might actually be able to slow down this whole telomere shortening process.
Wait, so we could be talking about actually slowing down one of the fundamental processes of aging at the cellular level.
That's the suggestion. And it gets even more interesting when you look at how lithium might be doing this.
Okay, I'm all ears.
So the research suggests that lithium could be boosting the activity of an enzyme called telomerase. Now, telomerase, that's the real MVP here. It can actually help to maintain and even lengthen those telomeres.
So it's like the telomere repair crew.
Exactly. And it's not just theory. The paper talks about this self-experiment being done by Dr. Sandra Kaufman. She's actually taking 75 milligrams of lithium orotate every day to see if it affects her own telomere length.
Wow, 75 milligrams. That's a decent amount.
It is. And it's worth noting that we're talking about lithium orotate here, not the pharmaceutical lithium that's used for, bipolar disorder.
Right, so this is a different form of lithium.
Exactly. And it's generally considered to be safer, but, more research is definitely needed, especially at those higher doses.
But it's exciting to think about the potential here, right? I mean, if we can actually impact telomere length, that could have huge implications for how we age.
Absolutely. But, one person's experiment isn't enough to draw definitive conclusions.
Of course, of course. So what else does the research say?
Well, there was this study that looked at people with bipolar disorder who are being treated with pharmaceutical lithium.
Okay, and what did they find?
Well, the people taking lithium actually had longer telomeres compared to those who weren't.
Wow, so even in a clinical setting, we're seeing a connection between lithium and telomere length.
It is fascinating, isn't it? Now, it's important to remember this is a specific group of people,
Right.
They had a particular health condition. But it does raise some really interesting questions about how lithium might be impacting cellular aging in a broader sense. And for those of you who are really interested in those, concrete markers of aging at the cellular level, this connection to telomeres is, well, it's definitely something to pay attention to.
Definitely. And moving beyond the cellular level, this paper also delves into something that's, well, it's already quite well established, the neuroprotective benefits of lithium.
Oh, absolutely. And this is where things get really exciting. We already know that lithium is used to treat certain psychiatric conditions, but it turns out it might actually be playing a role in keeping our brains younger and healthier as we age.
So it's not just about managing existing conditions, it's about preventing decline in the first place.
That's the potential. And the research suggests that lithium might be protective against some pretty serious neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
Wow, Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, those are some of the biggest fears people have as they age.
They are. And what's particularly interesting is how lithium seems to be achieving this. It appears to be influencing some really important pathways in the brain.
Okay, so how does it work?
Well, for one thing, it can increase levels of BDNF. That stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Yeah, it's basically like brain food. It helps brain cells grow, thrive, and survive.
So it's like fertilizer for the brain.
Exactly. And lithium also seems to help inhibit an enzyme called GSK3. Now, when GSK3 is too active, it can actually contribute to the development of neurodegenerative conditions. So lithium is kind of putting the brakes on a potentially harmful process.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, lithium is sort of doing a two-pronged attack on neurodegeneration. It's boosting the good stuff, the BDNF, and it's inhibiting the bad stuff, the GSK3.
That's a great way to put it. And the evidence for this doesn't just come from, test tubes and petri dishes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there are actually some really fascinating population-based studies that have looked at this.
And what do they find?
Well, they found that in areas where the drinking water naturally contains a bit more lithium, people tend to have lower rates of dementia and even longer lifespans.
Wait, so just from drinking water with a slightly higher lithium content?
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. Now, we can't say for sure that the lithium is the direct cause, but it's definitely an intriguing correlation. And these kinds of broad population studies, they can provide some really valuable clues for further research. I mean, this potential for preserving long-term cognitive health, that's huge.
Absolutely huge. I mean, we all want to keep our minds sharp as we age.
Exactly. And speaking of keeping things running smoothly, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about our cells' powerhouses, the mitochondria.
Mitochondria. Okay, now we're really getting down to the cellular level. Remind me, what do those do again?
So mitochondria are basically the energy factories of our cells.
Right, they convert the food we eat into usable energy.
Exactly. And as we get older, those factories can start to wear down a bit. They become less efficient at producing energy.
Then that leads to fatigue and all sorts of other age-related issues, right?
Absolutely. But here's where lithium comes in again. The research suggests that lithium might actually be able to boost something called mitochondrial biogenesis.
Biogenesis? That sounds impressive. What is that?
Basically, it means the creation of new mitochondria. It's like building brand new energy factories within our cells.
Well, so it's not just about repairing the old ones, it's about making new, more efficient ones.
Precisely. And that could have a really big impact on our overall energy levels and vitality as we age.
It's like giving ourselves a much-needed energy boost.
Exactly. And it goes even deeper than that. Lithium also seems to support a protein found in the mitochondria called SART3.
SART3, another one of those acronyms that makes me feel like I'm back in biology class.
Don't worry, it's not too complicated. SART3 is basically a protein that's been linked to longevity and overall metabolic health. And the idea is that lithium, by supporting both the creation of new mitochondria and the function of SART3, could help to prevent something called mitochondrial dysfunction.
Okay, and mitochondrial dysfunction, that's bad, right?
Yeah, it's increasingly recognized as a key factor in the aging process, so preventing that could have a significant impact on how well we age.
This is all starting to sound like a pretty powerful anti-aging strategy.
Well, the potential is definitely there. And it's all interconnected. We've talked about telomeres, we've talked about brain health, we've talked about mitochondria, but there's another piece of the puzzle that's really important to address.
Okay, what's that?
Inflammation.
Ah, inflammation. The silent killer, as they say.
Right. Chronic inflammation and the buildup of oxidative damage. Those are two of the biggest drivers of aging and age-related diseases.
Yeah, it's like rusting from the inside out.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah.
And what's remarkable is that lithium actually seems to have both anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties.
So it's like a double whammy against these two major age accelerators.
Exactly. It can help to reduce those pro-inflammatory cytokines, which are basically signaling molecules that promote inflammation throughout the body.
Right, like little messengers of disruption.
That's one way to think about it. And lithium can also help to enhance our body's own antioxidant defenses, which help to neutralize those damaging free radicals.
So it's like bolstering our internal defenses against the constant barrage of damage that we're exposed to every day.
Precisely. And by tackling these two major culprits of aging, lithium could potentially help to slow down the overall wear and tear on our bodies.
Now, zooming out a bit from the cellular level, what about the bigger picture? Does the research say anything about lithium and overall longevity?
This is where things get really intriguing. We've seen how lithium might be impacting specific aspects of aging, but what about its effects on lifespan as a whole?
Yeah, that's the ultimate question, isn't it?
It is. And the paper highlights some really compelling evidence in this area. First, there are those epidemiological studies we mentioned earlier, where they looked at large populations and found a correlation between low levels of lithium intake and a longer lifespan.
So people who lived in areas with slightly higher lithium levels in their water tended to live longer.
That's what the data suggests. And then there's the research on what we call model organisms, things like yeast, worms, and fruit flies.
Ah, the lab rats of the longevity world.
Exactly. And in these studies, lithium supplementation has actually been shown to extend their lifespan in controlled lab settings.
Wow, so lifespan extension in multiple species, that's pretty significant.
It is, and it suggests that there might be something fundamental going on here, something that applies across different forms of life.
It makes you wonder if there's some kind of deep evolutionary connection between lithium and longevity.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thought. And then there's this study from Japan that really caught our attention.
What was that about?
Well, they found that in areas where the drinking water naturally contained low levels of lithium, people had a reduced risk of death from all causes.
So not just a specific disease, but overall mortality.
Exactly. And that's really powerful evidence. Now, of course, correlation doesn't equal causation, right? We can't say for sure that the lithium is the reason for these longer lifespans, but it's definitely a compelling link. And for those of you who are really interested in the potential for extending lifespan, these findings are, well, they're definitely food for thought.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've seen how lithium might be impacting telomeres, brain health, mitochondria, inflammation, and even overall lifespan. It's a pretty impressive list.
It is, and it's exciting to think about the possibilities, but, it's important to remember that this is still an evolving area of research.
Right, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
Exactly. And the researchers are very clear about this. There are still a lot of unanswered questions.
Okay, so what are some of the key uncertainties? Where do we need more research?
Well, for one thing, we need more well-designed human clinical trials. We need to figure out what the optimal dosage of lithium is for achieving these potential longevity benefits in humans. And just as importantly, we need to understand the long-term safety profile, especially when it comes to those higher doses like the 75 milligrams that Dr. Kaufman was taking.
Right, because what works in a lab setting or in a simple organism like a worm might not necessarily translate to humans, or it could even have unintended consequences.
Exactly. And even with those studies showing telomere lengthening, we still don't know for sure whether that will actually translate into a longer and healthier lifespan for humans. We need more research to confirm that.
And a lot of the research we have so far has been focused on people who already have existing neurological conditions, right?
That's right. So we really need more studies that look at the effects of lithium supplementation in healthy individuals across the general population.
So there's still a lot to learn, but the early signs are definitely promising.
I would agree with that. But, it's important to be cautious and to approach this with a balanced perspective. We don't want to jump to conclusions or make any rash decisions based on preliminary findings.
Absolutely. So what's the bottom line here? Should we all be running out to buy lithium supplements?
I wouldn't recommend that. The researchers are very clear about the need for more research and for consulting with a healthcare professional before making any decisions about using lithium. And remember, we've been talking about a lot of different doses here. There's a big difference between taking 1 or 2 milligrams of lithium orotate per day, which is generally considered to be relatively safe, and taking 75 milligrams or more.
Right, those higher doses are venturing into uncharted territory.
Exactly. And even though some people might be experimenting with those higher doses and not experiencing any obvious negative effects in the short term, we still don't know what the long-term consequences might be.
So proceed with caution and definitely talk to your doctor before you start adding lithium to your daily regimen.
Absolutely. It's always better to err on the side of caution, especially when we're talking about something that can potentially impact our health in such significant ways.
All right, so let's wrap things up. We've had a fascinating deep dive today into the potential anti-aging properties of lithium. And it really seems like this humble element, which we've known about for so long, might be hiding some incredible secrets.
I think that's a fair assessment. The research suggests that lithium could be impacting multiple aspects of the aging process, from our telomeres to our brains to our cells' energy factories. And we've even seen some intriguing hints that it might be linked to a longer lifespan.
And it's all thanks to the researchers who are diligently working to unravel these mysteries and to shed light on these fascinating connections.
Absolutely. And while we still have a lot to learn, the possibilities here are truly exciting. It makes you wonder what other seemingly ordinary substances might be holding extraordinary potential for promoting health and longevity.
Yeah, it's like the whole world is a pharmacy waiting to be discovered, and it's up to us to explore it, to ask questions, and to keep an open mind.
Couldn't agree more. And remember, even though we've covered a lot of ground today, we've just scratched the surface. There's so much more to learn, so much more to discover. So stay curious, keep exploring, and maybe even do a little research of your own. But always, always consult with your healthcare professional before you make any decisions about your health.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive today. We'll see you next time.